The phone rang at 3 a.m., a shrill scream slicing through the silence of Lena's Chicago apartment. She jolted upright, heart hammering, the sheets clinging to her sweat-damp skin. The caller ID was blocked. Her fingers trembled as she answered. The voice on the other end low and urgent. "Lena Harper, you've got 10 minutes to pack. We're moving you. Now." She didn't ask why. She knew. The exposé she'd written on the city's biggest crime syndicate had gone viral, and the threats started pouring in. Letters slipped under her door, voicemails promising blood. Lena, 28, a journalist with a knack for digging too deep, had crossed a line. Now, her life was a chessboard and she was a pawn in checkmate. By sunrise, she was in a nondescript sedan, the city skyline fading in the rearview. The woman driving, Claire Morgan, was a U.S. Marshal 32, all sharp jawline and steady hands on the wheel. Her dark hair was pulled back, her badge clipped to her belt, her eyes scanning the road like a hawk. Lena stole glances, her pulse betraying her. Claire was too beautiful, dangerously so. It wasn't just her looks. It was the way she carried herself, like she could stop a bullet with a stare. "You're staring," Claire said, not looking away from the road. Her voice was smooth like whiskey over ice, but there was a flicker of amusement in it. Lena flushed, turning to the window. "Just processing." The lie tasted bitter. Processing didn't cover the way her stomach flipped when Claire's arm brushed hers as she shifted gears. They arrived at a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your secrets. The safe house was a modest apartment above a bakery, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread. Inside it was sparse, creaky floorboards, a couch that sagged in the middle, a kitchen table with a chip in the corner. Lena dropped her duffel bag, the thud echoing in the quiet. "This is home now," Claire said, tossing her jacket over a chair. "No internet, no contact with anyone from your old life. You're Sarah now. Sarah Klein." Lena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Sarah? That's the best you've got? I'm not a Sarah." Claire's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You're whoever I say you are. That's how this works." The first week was a war of wills. Lena hated the rules: no phone, no leaving without Claire, no writing. She was a journalist, damn it, not a prisoner. But every time she snapped, Claire matched her fire with calm, her voice steady, her eyes unreadable. It infuriated Lena, and it drew her in. One morning Lena found Claire in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her forearms as she kneaded dough. The bakery downstairs had sent up a recipe, a peace offering from the owner. The sight of Claire, stoic, unflappable Claire, humming softly to a radio playing Johnny Cash, her hands moving with quiet precision, cracked something in Lena's chest. "You cook?" Lena asked, leaning against the doorway trying to sound casual. Claire glanced up, a strand of hair falling into her eyes. "I survive." "You?" Lena snorted. "Ramen's my specialty." "Then you're learning today." Claire's tone was firm, but her eyes were warm like sunlight on a lake. She handed Lena an apron, their fingers brushing. The touch lingered, electric, and Lena's breath caught. Claire didn't pull away immediately. They worked side by side, the silence heavy with unspoken words. The dough smelled yeasty, the radio crackled with static, and Lena's heart pounded louder than both. She wanted to hate this, hate the confinement, hate the fake name, hate Claire for being her jailer. But hate was slipping, replaced by something softer, something dangerous. That night Lena couldn't sleep. The apartment was too quiet, the weight of her new life pressing against her ribs. She padded to the living room where Claire sat on the couch, a file open on her lap. The lamplight cast shadows across her face, softening her edges. "Can't sleep?" Claire asked without looking up. Lena sighed, sinking onto the couch. "How do you do it? Live like this, always looking over your shoulder." Claire closed the file, her gaze meeting Lena's. "You get used to it. Or you don't. But you keep going." Lena wanted to argue, to scream that she wasn't built for this. But Claire's eyes held her, steady and deep, like they could see through her bravado. "What if I can't?" Lena whispered, her voice breaking. Claire leaned closer, just enough for Lena to smell the faint cedar of her shampoo. You can. Because you have to. The air between them crackled, charged with something neither dared name. Lena's fingers twitched, wanting to reach out to close the gap. But Claire stood abruptly, breaking the spell. Get some rest, Sarah, she said, her voice tight. Lena watched her go, her heart a tangled knot of fear and longing. This was her life now, hiding, running, and falling for the one person she couldn't have. The woman sworn to protect her. The woman who was too beautiful to ignore. The days bled into weeks, each one a tightrope walk between safety and suffocation. Lena, Sarah, she corrected herself bitterly, tried to settle into the rhythm of the small town. The bakery's morning rush filled the air with the clatter of trays and the sweet tang of cinnamon rolls. Outside, kids biked down cracked sidewalks, their laughter sharp against the hum of cicadas. But Lena felt like a ghost, drifting through a life that wasn't hers. Claire was her anchor and her storm. The marshal was everywhere, checking windows, scanning the street, her presence a constant reminder of the danger Lena had invited. Yet, there were moments when Claire's guard slipped. Like when she laughed at Lena's sarcastic quip about the town's obsession with potlucks, her smile bright enough to rival the Indiana sun. Or when she caught Lena sketching in a notebook, her eyes lingering on the page with a curiosity that felt too personal. You're good, Claire said one afternoon, nodding at Lena's sketch of the bakery's storefront, all sharp lines and soft shadows. They were on the apartment's tiny balcony, the air heavy with summer heat. Lena shrugged, her pencil pausing. It's just doodling. Keeps me sane. Claire leaned against the railing, her arms crossed. You're not just a writer, are you? You see things. Details. Lena's chest tightened. That's what got me into this mess. Claire's expression softened, but she didn't reply. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant bark of a dog and the rustle of leaves. Lena wanted to push, to ask what Claire saw when she looked at her. But the words stuck, caught in the fear of what an answer might mean. The tension between them grew, a slow burn that flared in stolen glances and accidental touches. One evening they sat on the couch, a pizza box between them, the TV droning some mindless sitcom. Lena's knee brushed Claire's, and neither moved away. The laugh track faded, replaced by the thud of Lena's pulse in her ears. Claire's hand rested on the couch, inches from Lena's, her fingers twitching as if fighting an urge. You ever get tired of this? Lena asked, her voice low, almost swallowed by the TV's chatter. Playing babysitter to people like me? Claire's eyes flicked to her, sharp and searching. It's not babysitting. It's keeping you alive. Lena laughed, a hollow sound. Feels the same when I'm stuck here, pretending to be someone I'm not. Claire's jaw tightened, and for a moment Lena thought she'd snap back. But instead, Claire reached for her hand, her touch firm yet gentle. You're still you, Lena. No matter what I call you. The use of her real name hit like a shockwave. Lena froze, her breath catching as Claire's thumb brushed her knuckles. The room felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of pepperoni and the weight of something unspoken. Lena wanted to lean in, to let the moment swallow her whole, but the fear of danger, of rejection, of ruining this fragile thing, held her back. Claire pulled away first, standing abruptly. I shouldn't have, she started, then stopped, running a hand through her hair. I need to check the perimeter. Lena watched her go, the door clicking shut like a gunshot. She curled into the couch, her skin still tingling where Claire's hand had been. This wasn't just attraction. It was a wildfire, and Lena was terrified of burning alive. The next morning, Claire was all business, her face a mask of professionalism. But Lena noticed the way her hand shook slightly as she poured coffee, the way her eyes avoided hers. The distance stung, but it also fueled Lena's defiance. She wasn't going to let Claire hide behind her badge. That afternoon Lena pushed. Why'd you become a marshal? She asked, chopping carrots for a stew Claire insisted they make together. The knife's rhythmic thud matched her heartbeat. Claire hesitated, stirring the pot, the steam curling around her face. Someone has to keep people like you from getting killed. That's not an answer, Lena pressed, her voice sharp. What's your story, Claire? For a moment Claire's mask cracked. Her shoulders sagged, and she set the spoon down with a clink. My sister, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. She was like you. A journalist. Dug too deep. They found her in a ditch. Lena's hand stilled, the carrot forgotten. I'm sorry, she said, the words inadequate. Claire met her gaze, her eyes raw. I couldn't save her. But I can save you. The confession hung between them, heavy as the steam in the air. Lena wanted to reach out to bridge the gap, but Claire turned back to the stove, her walls slamming back into place. That night Lena lay awake, the memory of Claire's voice, broken, vulnerable, looping in her mind. She was falling hard and fast, for a woman who carried her duty like a shield. And Lena knew with a sinking certainty that love in a safe house was a dangerous game. But she wasn't sure she could stop playing. The safe house felt smaller with every passing day, the walls closing in on Lena like a vice. The town outside buzzed with its own rhythm, farmers' market chatter, the clink of coffee cups at the diner, the hum of a lawnmower down the street. But inside it was just her and Claire, trapped in a dance of avoidance and yearning. Lena's skin prickled with the weight of it, every glance a spark, every silence a smoldering ember. Claire's confession about her sister had cracked something open, but she'd sealed it shut just as fast. Now she was all sharp edges again. Her voice clipped as she ran through security protocols or checked the locks. Lena hated it, the distance, the pretense. She wanted to shake Claire, to demand she feel the same pull Lena did. But fear kept her quiet. Fear of the syndicate hunting her. Fear of Claire's rejection. Fear of what it meant to want someone so fiercely in a life that wasn't her own. One humid afternoon the tension broke. They were in the kitchen, washing dishes in silence, the only sounds the splash of water and the faint tick of a clock. Lena handed Claire a plate, their fingers brushing, and the air shifted, charged like the moment before a storm. Claire froze, her breath hitching, and Lena couldn't take it anymore. Why do you do that? Lena snapped, tossing the sponge into the sink. The water sloshed loud in the quiet. Act like nothing happened? Like you didn't tell me about your sister? Like you don't feel this? Claire's eyes flashed, her jaw tight. Feel what, Lena? Her voice was low, dangerous, but there was a tremor in it. Lena stepped closer, her heart pounding so loud she swore Claire could hear it. This. Whatever the hell this is. Her voice cracked, raw with frustration. You can't keep pretending it's nothing. Claire's hands gripped the counter, her knuckles white. I'm your protection officer. My job is to keep you alive, not to. She stopped, her breath ragged, like the words were tearing her apart. Not to what? Lena pressed, her voice softer now, almost a plea. Not to care? Because you do. I see it. For a moment Claire looked like she might bolt. But then her shoulders slumped, and she met Lena's gaze, her eyes a storm of conflict. You don't get it, she whispered. If I let myself care, I lose focus. And if I lose focus, you die. Lena's chest ached, the weight of Claire's words sinking in. But she didn't back down. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched Claire's arm. I'm not your sister, she said softly. And I'm not going anywhere. Claire's breath caught, and for a heartbeat they stood there, the world narrowing to the space between them. Then Claire pulled away, her face shuddered. I need air, she muttered, grabbing her jacket and heading for the door. Lena watched her go, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot. She sank onto a chair, her hands shaking, the scent of dish soap still clinging to her skin. She'd pushed too hard, and now the fragile thread between them felt like it might snap. Hours later, Claire returned, her face unreadable. She didn't mention the fight, and neither did Lena. But something had shifted. Claire's movements were less guarded, her glances lingering a fraction longer. That night, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Claire spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared too, you know. Of this. Of you. Lena's heart stuttered. Then why fight it? Claire didn't answer, but her hand brushed Lena's on the railing, deliberate this time. The touch was fleeting, but it burned. A promise and a warning all at once. The next day, danger crept closer. Claire got a call, her face hardening as she listened. Suspicious car spotted 2 towns over, she said, hanging up. Could be nothing. Could be them. Lena's stomach dropped, the syndicate's shadow looming large. What do? We stay sharp, Claire said, her voice steady but her eyes dark with worry. She checked her gun, the click of the magazine sharp in the quiet. And you stay close. Lena nodded, fear coiling in her gut. But as Claire's hand grazed her shoulder, a quiet reassurance, Lena realized something. She wasn't just afraid of the syndicate. She was afraid of losing Claire. Of losing whatever this was before it could even begin. That night, unable to sleep, Lena found Claire in the living room, staring at a map. The lamplight caught the lines of her face, and Lena's breath caught at how beautiful she was, even now weighed down by duty. You don't have to carry this alone, Lena said, her voice soft. Claire looked up, her eyes raw. I don't know how to do this any other way. Lena took a step closer, her heart in her throat. Let me show you. The air in the safe house was thick with tension, like the calm before a lightning strike. Lena felt it in her bones. The syndicate was closing in, and Claire's vigilance had shifted into overdrive. Every creak of the floorboards, every car passing outside made Lena's pulse spike. But it wasn't just the danger that kept her awake at night. It was Claire, her voice, her touch, the way her eyes held a storm Lena wanted to dive into. Claire was relentless, checking exits, running drills, her movements precise but her face etched with strain. Lena watched her, torn between admiration and frustration. Claire was a fortress, but Lena could see the cracks. Moments when her guard slipped, when her gaze lingered too long, when her breath hitched at Lena's nearness. One evening, as rain pounded the roof, Lena pushed again. They were in the kitchen, the air heavy with the scent of coffee and damp earth. Claire was cleaning her gun, her hands steady but her jaw tight. Lena sat across from her, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve, the silence suffocating. You can't keep shutting me out, Lena said, her voice cutting through the patter of rain. Not after last night. Claire's hand stilled, the cloth pausing over the barrel. Last night was a mistake, she said, but her voice lacked conviction, like she was trying to convince herself. Lena leaned forward, her heart racing. Was it? Because it didn't feel like one to me. Claire's eyes snapped to hers, raw and unguarded. You don't understand, Lena. If I let this happen, I'm not just risking my job. I'm risking you. Lena stood, closing the distance between them. I'm already at risk. We both are. So why are we pretending this isn't real? The air crackled, the rain a distant roar. Claire's chair scraped as she stood, her face inches from Lena's. Because I can't lose you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Not like I lost her. Lena's breath caught, the weight of Claire's grief slamming into her. She reached out, her fingers grazing Claire's cheek, soft and warm despite the tension. I'm not her, Lena said, her voice steady. And I'm right here. For a moment, Claire looked like she might pull away. But then she leaned in, her forehead resting against Lena's, her breath warm and uneven. You're making this so hard, she murmured. Good, Lena whispered back, her lips brushing Claire's. The kiss was tentative at first, a question. Then it deepened, desperate and hungry, like they'd both been starving for it. The gun clattered to the table, forgotten, as Claire's hands found Lena's waist, pulling her closer. The rain roared outside, drowning out the world, but inside it was just them. 2 women clinging to a moment that felt like defiance. They broke apart, breathless, their foreheads still touching. Claire's hands trembled, and Lena could feel her fighting to pull back, to rebuild her walls. But Lena held on, her fingers tangled in Claire's shirt. Don't run from this, she said, her voice fierce. Please. Claire didn't answer, but she didn't let go either. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the storm outside mirroring the one within. The next morning, reality crashed back. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor. They've got a lead on the syndicate. We might need to move. Her voice was clipped, her face a mask again, but her eyes betrayed her. They kept finding Lena soft and conflicted. Lena's stomach churned. Move? Again. Claire nodded, her hands busy packing a go-bag. If they're closing in, we can't stay. Lena wanted to scream, to beg for one more day of this fragile peace. But she saw the fear in Claire's eyes, not for herself but for Lena. So she swallowed her panic and helped pack, their hands brushing as they worked, each touch a reminder of what they'd almost lost. That night they sat on the couch, a map spread out between them. Claire traced possible routes, her voice steady but her fingers trembling. Lena watched her, the lamplight catching the curve of her jaw, and felt a surge of something fierce, love, yes, but also defiance. She wasn't just a witness to be protected. She was a woman fighting for her life, and for Claire. We'll get through this, Lena said, her hand covering Claire's on the map. Together. Claire looked at her, her eyes softening. Together, she echoed, and for the first time Lena believed they might actually make it. But outside the rain kept falling and the syndicate was still out there hunting. Lena knew the danger wasn't just in the shadows, it was in the way her heart beat for Claire, a risk neither of them could outrun. The kiss changed everything, yet nothing at all. The safe house was still a cage, the syndicate still a shadow creeping closer, but now Lena carried the memory of Claire's lips, her hands, her whispered confession. It was a lifeline and a weight, anchoring her to a moment she couldn't let go of, even as danger loomed. Claire was different after that night. Not softer exactly, but less guarded. Her touches lingered, a hand on Lena's shoulder as she passed, a brush of fingers when handing her coffee. But her eyes were haunted, scanning the windows, the street, the horizon, like she could see the threat coming. Lena felt it too, the air heavy with the promise of a reckoning. One morning, as the town woke to the chatter of sparrows and the clatter of the bakery downstairs, Claire's phone buzzed again. Her face darkened as she read the message. They've got a confirmed sighting, she said, her voice low, controlled. Chicago plates 2 towns over. We're on high alert. Lena's stomach twisted, the coffee in her hand turning cold. How close are they? Too close. Claire's jaw tightened, her hand resting on her gun. We stay put for now, but if they move in, we're gone. Lena nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to be brave, to match Claire's steel, but fear gnawed at her. Not just for her life, but for what she and Claire had only just begun to build. She reached for Claire's hand, her fingers trembling. Promise me something. Claire's eyes met hers, sharp but soft. What? If we have to run, we do it together. No leaving me behind. Claire's expression cracked just for a moment. She squeezed Lena's hand, her grip fierce. I'm not losing you. The day passed in a blur of tension. Claire paced, her boots thudding against the floorboards, her phone never far from her hand. Lena tried to distract herself, sketching the view from the balcony, the town square, the diner's neon sign flickering in the distance, but her pencil shook, smudging the lines. The air smelled of rain again, heavy and expectant. That evening they cooked together, a quiet ritual that felt like defiance. The sizzle of onions in the pan, the clink of spoons, the soft hum of Claire's voice as she talked about her childhood in Ohio. It grounded Lena, even as her heart raced. They ate at the table, their knees brushing under it, the silence between them warm but fragile. You ever think about what comes after this? Lena asked, pushing her plate away. The question hung in the air, heavy with hope and fear. Claire's fork paused, her eyes distant. After doesn't exist until you're safe. Lena leaned forward, her voice fierce. I'm not just talking about safety, Claire. I'm talking about us. Claire's breath hitched, and for a moment, Lena thought she'd shut down again. But then Claire reached across the table, her hand covering Lena's. "I want there to be an us," she said, her voice raw. "But I don't know how to do this without putting you at risk." Lena's heart pounded, her fingers tightening around Claire's. "Then we figure it out. Together." The moment was shattered by a sharp knock at the door. Claire was on her feet in an instant, gun in hand, her body angled to shield Lena. "Stay back," she whispered, her voice steel. Lena's pulse roared in her ears as Claire approached the door, her movements silent and precise. She peered through the peephole, then relaxed slightly, holstering her gun. "It's just Mrs. Carter," she said, opening the door to the bakery owner, a plump woman with flour-dusted hands and a nervous smile. "Thought you girls might want some fresh rolls," Mrs. Carter said, holding out a basket. But her eyes darted to the street, and Lena caught it, the flicker of unease. Claire noticed too. "Something wrong?" she asked, her tone casual but her hand hovering near her badge. Mrs. Carter hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Saw a strange car parked down the street. Tinted windows. Been there a while." Claire's face hardened, but she thanked Mrs. Carter and closed the door. She turned to Lena, her eyes blazing. "Pack a bag. Now." Lena's hand shook as she stuffed clothes into her duffel, the memory of Claire's touch warring with the fear clawing at her chest. Claire was already on the phone, her voice low and urgent, coordinating with her team. The safe house, once a refuge, felt like a trap. As they prepared to leave, Claire grabbed Lena's arm, her grip steady. "Whatever happens, you stay with me. Understand?" Lena nodded, her throat too tight for words. Outside, the night was quiet, the air thick with the scent of rain and danger. They stepped into the dark, Claire's hand on her gun, Lena's heart in her throat. The syndicate was close, but so was Claire, and Lena clung to that as they faced the unknown together. The night was a blur of motion and fear. Claire led Lena through the back alley behind the bakery, their footsteps muffled by the damp pavement. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and the faint sweetness of bread lingering from below. Claire's hand gripped Lena's wrist, her touch both a lifeline and a command. "Stay low," she whispered, her voice cutting through the distant hum of a car engine. Lena's heart pounded, her breath shallow as they crouched behind a dumpster. The strange car Mrs. Carter mentioned was still out there, its headlights slicing through the dark like a predator's eyes. Claire's eyes scanned the alley, her gun drawn, her body coiled like a spring. Lena wanted to speak, to ask if they'd make it, but the fear in her throat choked the words. Claire's phone vibrated, a faint buzz against the silence. She glanced at it, her face grim. "Backup's 10 minutes out," she whispered. "We need to move." They slipped through the shadows, Claire's movements fluid, precise, like she'd done this 100 times. Lena stumbled, her sneakers catching on a loose cobblestone, but Claire steadied her, her hand firm on Lena's elbow. "I've got you," she said, her voice low but fierce. They reached a side street, where a nondescript sedan waited, keys already in the ignition. Claire pushed Lena into the passenger seat, her eyes never leaving the rear view as she slid behind the wheel. The engine roared to life and they peeled out, the town's sleepy lights blurring past. Lena's hand shook, clutching her duffel, the weight of their kiss still burning in her memory. "Where are we going?" Lena asked, her voice barely steady. "Somewhere safe," Claire said, her eyes flicking to the side mirrors. "For now." The road stretched dark and endless, the only sounds the hum of the engine and the faint crackle of Claire's radio. Lena stole glances at her, the dashboard lights casting shadows across her face. Claire was beautiful even now, her jaw set, her hand steady on the wheel. But there was something else, a flicker of fear in her eyes, a crack in her armor. "You okay?" Lena asked, her voice soft. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. "I will be when you're safe." Lena reached out, her hand resting on Claire's thigh, a bold move that surprised even herself. Claire tensed but didn't pull away. "We're in this together," Lena said, echoing Claire's earlier words. Don't forget that. Claire's hand covered Lena's just for a moment, her touch warm and grounding. I won't, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They drove for hours, the night swallowing the miles. Claire's team had set up a new safe house, a cabin in the woods 2 states over. It was remote, surrounded by pines that whispered in the wind, the air sharp with the scent of sap and earth. Inside it was bare wooden floors, a sagging couch, a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years. Lena dropped her bag, the thud loud in the quiet. Claire checked the perimeter, her flashlight cutting through the dark. When she returned, her face was drawn, her shoulders heavy. We're clear for now, she said, but her voice carried an edge of doubt. Lena sank onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over her. How long do we keep running? Claire sat beside her, close enough that their thighs brushed. As long as it takes. Lena turned to her, the firelight catching the worry in Claire's eyes. And us? How long do we keep pretending this is just a job? Claire's breath hitched, her hands clenching in her lap. Lena, Don't, Lena cut in, her voice fierce. Don't tell me it's too dangerous. I know that. But I also know how I feel. And I know you feel it too. Claire's eyes searched hers, raw and unguarded. For a moment Lena thought she'd pull away again. But then Claire leaned in, her lips crashing against Lena's with a desperation that stole her breath. The kiss was fire, all heat and need. Their hands tangled in hair, in clothes, in each other. The world, the syndicate, the danger, the running fell away, leaving only them. They pulled apart, breathless, their foreheads pressed together. I'm terrified, Claire admitted, her voice shaking. Not of them. Of this. Of losing you. Lena cupped her face, her thumbs brushing Claire's cheeks. Then don't let go. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, the fire's faint crackle their only company. For the first time in weeks Lena felt safe. Not from the syndicate, but from the fear of losing Claire. But as dawn broke, painting the cabin in soft gray light, Lena knew the danger was far from over. The syndicate was still out there, and love, no matter how fierce, couldn't stop a bullet. The cabin was a fragile sanctuary, its wooden walls creaking under the weight of the wind outside. Lena woke to the smell of pine and the warmth of Claire's arm draped over her, their bodies still tangled from the night before. The fire had died to embers, but the heat between them lingered, a quiet rebellion against the chaos closing in. Lena traced the curve of Claire's shoulder, her skin soft under the rough flannel, and felt a pang of something fierce, hope maybe, or defiance. Claire stirred, her eyes fluttering open, and for a moment they just looked at each other, the world held at bay. Morning, Claire murmured, her voice husky, a smile tugging at her lips. Morning, Lena whispered back, her heart aching with how right this felt. But the moment shattered as Claire's phone buzzed, a harsh reminder of reality. She sat up, her face hardening as she read the message. They've got a tail on us, Claire said, her voice clipped. Spotted a car matching the description near the highway. We need to move. Again. Lena's stomach dropped, the warmth of the night replaced by cold dread. How do they keep finding us? Claire's jaw tightened, her hands already packing their bags. Someone's leaking. Or they're better than I thought. They left the cabin at dawn, the air sharp with frost, the forest eerily quiet. Claire drove, her eyes scanning the mirrors, her gun within reach. Lena sat beside her, her hands clenched, the memory of Claire's touch warring with the fear clawing at her chest. The road wound through endless trees, the silence between them heavy but not empty. It was filled with everything they hadn't said, everything they couldn't afford to lose. Hours later they reached a new safe house, a rundown motel on the edge of a nowhere town. The neon sign flickered, buzzing like a dying insect, and the room smelled of stale cigarettes and mildew. Claire checked the locks, her movements mechanical, but Lena saw the strain in her eyes, the weight of carrying both their lives. We can't keep doing this, Lena said, her voice breaking as she dropped her bag on the sagging bed. Running. Hiding. It's not a life. Claire turned, her face raw. It's the only way to keep you alive. Lena stepped closer, her hands trembling. But what about you? You're killing yourself trying to save me. Claire's breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like she might break. You're worth it, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The words hit Lena like a punch, stealing her breath. She closed the distance, her hands cupping Claire's face, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. It was a promise, a plea, a defiance of the danger closing in. Claire's hands gripped Lena's waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment the motel room, the syndicate, the world, they all disappeared. But reality wouldn't stay gone. That night, as they lay in the narrow bed, Claire's phone buzzed again. She answered, her voice low, her body tensing beside Lena. Understood, she said, hanging up. They've got a name. One of the syndicate's hitmen. He's close. Lena's heart raced, her hand finding Claire's in the dark. What do we do? We stay sharp, Claire said, her voice steady but her fingers trembling. And we trust each other. The next day was a blur of preparation. Claire ran through escape routes, her voice calm but her eyes darting to Lena every few seconds, like she was memorizing her. Lena tried to stay strong, but fear was a living thing, curling in her gut. She wasn't just afraid of the hitman, she was afraid of what this was doing to Claire, the woman who'd become her everything. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the motel in shades of orange and shadow, Claire pulled Lena aside. If something happens, she said, her voice low, you run. Don't look back. Promise me. Lena's throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. No. I'm not leaving you. Claire's hands cupped Lena's face, her thumbs brushing away the tears. You have to. Because I can't lose you. The words were a knife cutting deep. Lena kissed her, fierce and desperate, pouring everything into it, her fear, her love, her refusal to let go. Outside, the neon sign buzzed, the night closing in. The syndicate was coming, and Lena knew this might be their last moment of peace. But as she held Claire, their hearts beating in sync, she vowed to fight for her life, for their love, for a future they both deserved. The motel room was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of what was coming. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting in her lap, the faint hum of the neon sign outside seeping through the thin walls. Claire paced, her boots scuffing the worn carpet, her phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with her team. The syndicate's hitman was close, too close, and every tick of the clock felt like a countdown. Lena watched Claire, her heart a tangled mess of love and dread. The marshal's face was a mask of focus, but Lena saw the cracks. The way her hand trembled as she hung up, the way her eyes lingered on Lena like she was trying to memorize her. They're sending backup, Claire said, her voice steady but tight. We hold tight until they get here. And if they don't? Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire met her gaze, her eyes fierce. They will. But the night had other plans. At 2 a.m. the motel's parking lot lit up with headlights, the growl of an engine cutting through the silence. Claire was at the window in an instant, her gun drawn, her body a shield between Lena and the door. Stay down, she hissed, her voice low and urgent. Lena crouched behind the bed, her heart hammering, the air sharp with the smell of dust and fear. She clutched the edge of the mattress, her nails digging into the fabric, as Claire peered through the curtains. 2 men, she whispered. Armed. Lena's breath caught, her mind racing. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading since that first phone call in Chicago. But as she looked at Claire, her silhouette sharp against the neon glow, Lena felt a surge of something stronger than fear. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a woman in love, and she'd fight for it. Claire turned, her eyes locking with Lena's. If I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. Lena shook her head, her voice fierce. I'm not leaving you. Claire's expression softened, just for a moment, before the door rattled with a heavy knock. Her gun snapped up, her body tensing. Federal Marshal, she shouted. Identify yourself. Silence. Then a low chuckle chilling in its calm. Open the door, Marshal. Let's talk. Claire's jaw tightened, her eyes never leaving the door. Lena, get to the bathroom. Lock it. Lena hesitated, her heart screaming against leaving Claire alone. But Claire's glare was unrelenting, and Lena obeyed, crawling to the tiny bathroom and locking the door. She pressed her ear to the wood, her breath shallow, listening as Claire faced the threat alone. The door creaked open, followed by the sound of boots on the carpet. "Where's the girl?" a man's voice asked, smooth and cold. "She's not here," Claire lied, her voice steady. "You want her, you go through me." The man laughed again, and Lena's stomach twisted. She could hear the click of a gun, the shuffle of movement. Then a shot rang out, sharp and deafening, and Lena's world stopped. She flung the door open, her scream tearing from her throat. "Claire!" Claire was on the floor, blood seeping from her shoulder, but her gun was still raised, her eyes blazing. The hitman lay sprawled, a bullet in his chest. The second man was gone, his footsteps fading into the night. Lena dropped to Claire's side, her hands shaking as she pressed them to the wound. "Stay with me," she begged, tears streaming down her face. Claire's hand found hers, weak but steady. "I'm okay," she rasped, her voice thick with pain. "Backup's coming." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, and Lena clung to Claire, her heart pounding with relief and terror. The backup team stormed in, securing the scene, and paramedics rushed Claire to the hospital. Lena sat in the waiting room, her clothes stained with Claire's blood, the sterile smell of antiseptic burning her nose. She'd almost lost her, and the thought was a knife in her chest. Hours later, Claire was stable, her shoulder bandaged, her face pale but alive. Lena sat by her bed, holding her hand, the beeping of the monitor a steady reminder of how close they'd come. "You scared the hell out of me," Lena whispered, her voice breaking. Claire's lips curved, a weak smile. "Told you I'd keep you safe." Lena laughed through her tears, leaning down to kiss Claire's forehead. "No more heroics, okay? We do this together." Claire nodded, her eyes soft. Together. The syndicate was crippled, the hitman's death a blow they couldn't recover from. Lena's testimony, delivered from a secure location, sealed their fate. Months later, she and Claire built a new life, no longer running. It wasn't perfect, scars lingered, both physical and not, but it was theirs. In a small house by a lake with the sound of waves and the scent of pine, they found peace. Love had been their defiance,